By the Emperor's will, the ultimate chronicle shall be forged. The Heretical Files, Episode 1. The Lost Primarchs, what the Inquisition doesn't want you to know. Chapter 1. The Shadow Awakens. I am Ser Vox Imperium, High Chronicler of the Ordo Chronos. From the shadow vaults of Terra to the ruins of Cadia, I chronicle what was, what is, and what could have been. The Imperium does not wish you to know what I am about to reveal, but the truth endures. Welcome, servants of the Imperium, to the first sacred transmission of the Heretical Files. Today, we pierce the veil of the galaxy's darkest secret, a secret so profound that even the Inquisition's most radical members dare not speak it openly, a secret that has shaped 10,000 years of Imperial history through its very absence. In the halls of the Imperial Palace, deep beneath the throne room where the God Emperor maintains his eternal vigil, there stands a chamber few have ever seen. Within this chamber, 20 pedestals once stood proud, each bearing the statue of Primarch, the Emperor's gene-forged sons, the demigods who would conquer the galaxy in his name. Yet 2 remain forever empty, their occupants erased so thoroughly that even their names have been consumed by the void. These are the Lost Primarchs, the Forgotten and the Purged, and their story is one the Imperium would kill to keep buried. This is not a tale of glory or conquest. This is the story of the Imperium's greatest shame, the murder of memory itself. Prepare yourself, for what you are about to hear may shake your faith in the very foundations of the Imperium of Man. The Data Codex opens. The servitor scribes stir from their slumber. Let the forbidden knowledge flow. Chapter 2. The Edict of Obliteration. To understand the magnitude of what we're discussing, you must first comprehend the nature of Imperial censorship. This isn't simply missing records or destroyed archives. This is something far more sinister. This is damnatio memoriae, a condemnation of memory itself. The Lost Primarchs represent the ultimate expression of Imperial power, not through conquest, but through erasure. What we're dealing with here is the most successful cover-up in the history of the galaxy, more complete than any inquisitorial purge, more thorough than any orbital bombardment. The official designation tells us everything we need to know. The 2nd and 11th Legions, known only as the Forgotten and the Purged. Even these titles are deliberate. They tell us nothing while revealing everything. One was forgotten, perhaps lost to some catastrophic fate. The other was purged, actively destroyed by imperial decree. The erasure was completed at least 43 years before the Horus heresy began. Think about that timeline, servants of the Imperium. During the height of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor's vision seemed unstoppable, when humanity was reclaiming the galaxy world by world, the Emperor himself was already killing his own sons. This wasn't bureaucratic oversight. This wasn't the fog of war. This was the most successful edict of obliteration ever carried out in Imperial history. The techniques the Inquisition would later perfect, the systematic destruction of names, deeds, monuments, and even their legion numbers from official discourse, were pioneered here by the Emperor himself. But here's what makes this erasure particularly chilling. The oath of silence imposed upon the surviving Primarchs. Even beings of their stature, demigods who feared nothing in the galaxy, were bound never to speak of their lost brothers. When Lorgar the Word-Bearers faced the Emperor's wrath of Monarchia, he whispered these words: "We will be cast alongside the brothers we no longer speak of." This wasn't shame speaking. This was terror. Terror from a being who had looked upon the face of the divine and found it wanting. What could possibly frighten a Primarch so completely that even the mention of his lost brothers would reduce him to whisper fragments? The answer, my fellow chroniclers, lies in understanding that the Emperor never intended to create 20 sons. He intended to create 20 tools. And when those tools failed, he had other tools ready to destroy them. Chapter 3. The Executioner's Blade. The most damning evidence comes from an unexpected source. Leman Russ himself, the Wolf King, the Emperor's executioner. in the classified records of the burning of Prospero. As the Space Wolf prepared to assault the Thousand Suns, Russ made a chilling observation that the Imperial censors somehow missed. This would not be the first time his wolves had been unleashed against fellow Astartes. Let that sink in, servants of the Imperium. The Space Wolves had killed Space Marines before. Not heretics, not traitors, fellow Astartes, and not in the heat of the Horus heresy, but decades earlier, during the Great Crusade itself. Russ earned his title Emperor's Executioner before the word heretic was ever applied to a Primarch. The Emperor had contingency plans for dealing with failed Primarchs from the very beginning. This revelation shatters the Imperium's carefully constructed narrative of 20 noble sons setting out to conquer the galaxy in unity. The evidence runs deeper. During the humiliation of Lorgrit Monarchia, the chroniclers recorded that 18 Space Marine legions were present to witness the word-bearer's censure. 18, not 20. 2 were already gone, already forgotten, already purged. The timing is crucial here. Monarchia happened during the Great Crusade's height, when the Imperium was supposedly at its most glorious. Even in triumph, the Emperor was already killing his own sons. Even in victory, he was already perfecting the art of erasure. But here's where conspiracy deepens, and where the Inquisition silence becomes most telling. Around the same time the Lost Legions vanished, the Ultramarines' numbers swelled until they eclipsed all other legions. The official explanation? Exceptional recruiting and battlefield success. Coincidence? The Inquisition would have you believe so. The suppressed truth is far more disturbing. Surviving Astartes from the Lost Legions were likely absorbed into the Ultramarines. Their identities were scrubbed, their heraldry erased, their very existence folded into Guilliman's expanding ranks. The Ultramarines' later ability to create numerous successor chapters may have been fueled by this hidden manpower, the ghosts of the Purge becoming the foundation of the Second Founding. Even characters within the lore discuss this possibility with nervous whispers. One word-bearer calls it insipid conjecture, but the numbers don't lie. The Ultramarine sudden expansion wasn't natural growth. It was enforced assimilation. The living were made to forget their origins, their brothers, their very selves. In the Imperial Palace, Rogel Dorn once discovered a chamber containing 20 statues, one for each Primarch. 2 stood shrouded, their faces deliberately obliterated, not missing, not damaged, destroyed. This wasn't accident or neglect. This was systematic iconoclasm ordered from the highest levels. The empty pedestals weren't monuments to failure. They were warnings. Chapter 4. The Theories the Inquisition Fears. Now we enter the realm of the truly heretical. The theories that the Inquisition fears most, because they threaten the very foundations of imperial doctrine. 3 possibilities emerge from the shadows of history, each more damning than the last. Theory 1. The First Heretics. The most dangerous theory suggests the Lost Primarchs fell to chaos before Horus even dreamed of rebellion. Consider the implications. If true, this would mean the Emperor knew chaos could corrupt his sons decades before the heresy. He covered up this knowledge to prevent panic, to maintain the illusion of inevitable victory. The Horus heresy wasn't the first great betrayal, just the first that couldn't be hidden. Think about it. If the Emperor had already lost 2 sons to the ruinous powers, his desperate actions during the heresy begin to make sense. His retreat to Terra, his work on the Webway project, his increasing isolation, all signs of a being who had already seen his greatest fear realized. But there's more. The timing of the Lost Legion's disappearance coincides with the Emperor's increasing secrecy about the nature of chaos. The imperial truth, with its denial of gods and supernatural powers, may have been born from the ashes of the first Primarchs to fall to demonic influence. Theory 2. The genetic catastrophe. Here, we must examine the words of Sanguinius himself, the angel, the most beloved of all Primarchs. In a moment of weakness, he confessed to Horus, "I will not be responsible for the eradication of the blood angels from imperial history. I will not have a third empty plinth beneath the roof of the hegemon. Third empty plinth. Not second, third. This suggests the Lost Primarchs suffered genetic flaws so severe that the Emperor chose obliteration over cure. The Blood Angels' red thirst was manageable, their black rage controllable. Whatever afflicted the Lost Legions was not. Perhaps they devolved into something inhuman, something that threatened not just the Imperium but the very concept of what it meant to be human. The Emperor, for all his power, was not infallible. The Primarchs were experiments, glorious, terrible experiments, and experiments sometimes fail in catastrophic ways. Theory 3, the Xenos Heresy. The most radical theory whispers of a Primarch who embraced Xenos' allies. In Imperium's early days, before the full scope of chaos was known, this would have been the ultimate blasphemy. A Primarch who saw humanity's future in cooperation rather than domination would have been branded the worst kind of heretic. Imagine a Primarch who befriended the Eldar, who saw the wisdom in their warnings about chaos, or one who allied with the Tau's concept of the greater good, finding it superior to the Emperor's vision of human supremacy. Such a Primarch would have been an existential threat to the very concept of imperial doctrine. The Emperor's xenophobia wasn't born from blind hatred. It was a calculated policy. Any deviation from this path would have undermined the entire foundation of the Great Crusade. Such a Primarch couldn't just be defeated. He had to be unmade, his very existence denied. Each of these theories reveals a different aspect of the Emperor's character. Not the benevolent father figure of propaganda, but a tyrant who would kill his own sons to protect his vision. The Lost Primarchs weren't just casualties of war. They were sacrifices on the altar of imperial necessity. Chapter 5, the Vision of Chaos. But perhaps the most disturbing evidence comes from the realm of chaos itself. In a vision induced by the ruinous powers, Horus witnessed the Emperor's gene laboratories beneath the Himalayas. He walked among the incubation tanks, each one containing the genetic template of a Primarch. He paused before the tank marked 11, feeling the untapped glories that lay within, knowing they would never come to pass. The vision showed him potential, a Primarch who could have been, should have been, but would never be. Then he struck the tank in anger. Was this prophecy or causation? Did Horus's corruption somehow doom the 11 Primarch before he was even born? The implications are staggering. It suggests chaos had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. Think about the temporal mechanics here. Chaos exists outside normal time. The same powers that would eventually corrupt Horus may have already reached back to influence the fate of the Lost Primarchs. The vision shows us that the 11 Primarch was never meant to awaken, not because of genetic failure, but because of temporal intervention. This revelation suggests that the great game between chaos and the Emperor began far earlier than anyone suspected. The Lost Primarchs weren't just casualties of imperial policy. They were the first moves in a cosmic chess match that would ultimately consume the galaxy. But here's what the Inquisition truly fears. If chaos could influence the fate of the Lost Primarchs before they were even born, what else might they have influenced? How many other failures and accidents throughout imperial history were actually the result of temporal manipulation by the ruinous powers? The empty pedestals aren't just monuments to the dead. They're proof that the war against chaos began before the Imperium even knew it was at war. The Emperor's greatest tragedy wasn't losing 2 sons. It was never realizing that he had already lost them before they were born. And if the vision is true, if Horus's corruption somehow doomed the 11 Primarch, then the Horus heresy wasn't just a rebellion, it was revenge. Revenge for a brother who never got to live, never got to fight, never got to die with honor. The Lost Primarchs haunt the Imperium not just through their absence, but through the possibility that their fate was sealed by the very powers that would eventually tear the galaxy apart. They are proof that in the grim darkness of the far future, even the past can be weaponized against the present. Chapter 6, the Keeper of Secrets. As the High Chronicler of the Ordo Chronos, I have walked through the ruins of 1,000 worlds, witnessed the fall of saints and the rise of heretics. But nothing has haunted me more than the mystery of the Lost Primarchs. In the deepest vaults of the Ordo Chronos, there exists a single document, a fragment of parchment bearing the seal of the Emperor himself. It contains a single line of text written in the Emperor's own hand. Let it be known that the 2nd and 11th legions were, and always have been, necessary sacrifices. Necessary sacrifices, not tragic losses, not failed experiments. Necessary sacrifices. This suggests that the Emperor knew from the beginning that some of his sons would have to die. The Lost Primarchs weren't anomalies. They were part of the plan, built-in failure points, designed to teach the surviving Primarchs the price of disobedience. Consider the psychological impact on the remaining 18 Primarchs. They all knew that 2 of their brothers had been erased from history. They all knew that the Emperor was capable of ordering their deaths. They all knew that loyalty was not optional. It was survival. The Lost Primarchs weren't just casualties of Imperial policy. They were tools of control. Their absence shaped the behavior of their surviving brothers more than their presence ever could have. Fear is a powerful motivator, and the Emperor wielded it masterfully. But here's what truly disturbs me. The Emperor's plan worked. For 43 years, from the erasure of the Lost Legions to the outbreak of the Horus heresy, the remaining Primarchs remained loyal. They conquered the galaxy in the Emperor's name, never questioning, never doubting, never remembering their lost brothers. The Horus heresy wasn't a failure of the Emperor's plan. It was its inevitable conclusion. The same system that kept the Primarchs loyal through fear eventually drove them to rebellion. The Lost Primarchs were the first casualties of the Emperor's authoritarianism, but they would not be the last. In the end, the greatest tragedy of the Lost Primarchs isn't that they died, it's that they succeeded. They became the perfect Imperial citizens, silent, obedient, and utterly forgotten. They achieved the ultimate loyalty, the loyalty of non-existence. And somewhere in the depths of the Imperial Palace, 2 empty pedestals stand as monuments to that terrible success, not to failure, but to the price of absolute power, not to weakness, but to the strength required to murder your own children for the greater good. The Lost Primarchs aren't missing from Imperial history. They are Imperial history. They are proof that the Imperium was built on the bones of its own ideals, that the Emperor's vision required the sacrifice of his own sons. Chapter 7. The Truth That Endures. And so we come to the end of our first journey into the heretical files. What have we learned? What truths have we uncovered in the shadow vaults of forbidden knowledge? The Lost Primarchs represent more than missing history. They represent the Imperium's willingness to murder its own past to preserve its future. They are proof that the Emperor was not the benevolent father figure propaganda, but a tyrant who would kill his own sons to protect his vision. What the Inquisition doesn't want you to know is this. The Emperor planned for the possibility of failed Primarchs from the beginning. At least one Primarch was executed by his own brothers. The Imperium's foundational narrative is built on lies and erasure. The techniques used to destroy the Lost Legions became the template for all future Imperial censorship. But more than that, the Lost Primarchs revealed a fundamental contradiction at the heart of the Imperium. An empire that claims to value human life above all else was founded on the systematic murder of its own champions. A government that preaches unity was built on the erasure of dissent. A faith that promises eternal glory was born from the ashes of forgotten saints. The empty pedestals in the Imperial Palace aren't monuments to failure. They're warnings. Warnings that even the Emperor's most beloved sons are expendable when they threaten the greater plan. Warnings that loyalty is not enough, that perfection is not enough, that even divine heritage is not enough to guarantee survival in the Imperium of man. Every Space Marine who kneels before the Emperor's image kneels in the shadow of those empty pedestals. Every Imperial citizen who prays for the return of the Primarchs prays for the return of the already dead. Every servant of the Imperium who believes in the righteousness of their cause serves an empire built on the bones of its own children. The Lost Primarchs aren't just missing pieces of history. They're proof that Imperial history is nothing but missing pieces. Every great victory, every noble sacrifice, every glorious crusade exists in the shadow of what was erased to make it possible. This is the truth that endures. The Imperium of Man didn't just conquer the galaxy, it conquered memory itself. And in doing so, it became the greatest enemy of the very ideals it claimed to represent. The data codex closes. The servitor scribes return to their slumber. But the truth endures. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, two lost sons continue their eternal vigil, watching over an empire that murdered them to ensure its own survival. I am Ser Vox Imperium, High Chronicler of the Ordo Chronos. May the shadows guide you until we meet again in the next heretical file. Remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, even the past can be weaponized. For the Emperor, for the truth, for the lore that must never be forgotten. The chronometer marks another day in the endless vigil. The truth endures, the shadows whisper, and the Lost Primarchs wait.